This week's featured guest is Tony O'Neill of Simplify Gardening. Tony is a full time firefighter and passionate gardener. Tony's love for nature and helping others become great gardeners is what drives him. Growing up, his grandfather instilled in him a love for gardening, and much of what he knows today was learned from him. Tony attended a horticultural college as a youth, providing him with a great foundation, but he believes that nature is the best teacher. Tony shares his gardening experiences on his YouTube channel, Simplify Gardening. He is also the author of the books Your First Vegetable Garden and Composting Masterclass. Let's welcome Tony to the show.
Hey guys, how
Awesome,
you doing?
awesome. There we go. Tony O'Neill, how you doing? Thanks for joining us on Let's Get Growing.
I'm good, Enoch. How you doing, mate?
Doing really well, really well. Having a
Excellent.
great show, having some great conversations with
Yeah, I've
all of
been
you
watching.
really with all you really awesome gardeners over in the UK.
Yes, it's it's a lot of good gardeners everywhere. To be honest with you, the gardening community is probably one of the best communities online.
Yeah.
People are more than willing to help each other and and pass on the knowledge so that new people can benefit from that and take that
Yeah.
forward themselves.
Yes, absolutely. And that's again too one of the things that I find really awesome about gardening and the gardening community as a whole. It's worldwide. There's people
Yeah,
everywhere enjoying the same sort of, benefits and of gardening that we all get to experience. Sort of like what we were talking with Jason with just a bit ago.
it's
Gardening can
amazing.
bring you such a great peace of mind and all of that sort of stuff too. And
I I talk about microclimates all the time, but 18 floors just didn't even come into my head. You know what I mean? It's just like, God. And then the fact that aphids get up there and stuff, you think, wow,
Isn't that
it's
something?
crazy, mental.
I think again, as I've followed him, I think that's one of the things I've always found the most fascinating was how, those sort of things that we're dealing with on the ground level,
Mm.
are also very similar things that you can deal with when you're 18 floors up on a balcony. And again, too, aphids, maybe I can kind of understand floating and around and
Yeah.
getting around or something could land on
You should be all
something.
right with carrots.
Yeah, 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 for sure. But the slugs take
I
me by surprise. How in the world do you get slugs
I
up
think
18
if you
floors?
if you're buying bagged potting soil,
Yeah,
there's bound to be eggs and things in there,
yeah,
and then you're
yeah,
just transporting it up in.
yeah. Probably with most of the things he deals with is probably that similar situation,
Yeah.
is that they're just catching a ride on your different implements or plants or things like that that you're getting. But still, it's just I can't imagine being on in that situation, being on such a high level that you'd go out and find slugs eating up your stuff. It's just they're
Yeah,
bad
it's
enough when you got them on ground level, but to also
we're
have to deal with
quite
them there.
we're quite windy here, but I can imagine 18 floors up is a totally different ball game, So
Hmm.
trying to support tall plants then I think would be
Oh
a
yeah,
a bit of a challenge.
yeah. I've seen videos of his where he's showing the wind just whipping things around up there, and I'm like, oh, those poor plants. But if that's your space and
strap
that's what you got to
strap
garden
them
with.
to the walls.
Exactly. That's so great. Yeah. So let's see here. Full-time firefighter, Tony. You're
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get into doing that?
Um, do you know, it was one of those things. It's funny, there's a bit of a story behind it. Originally, I wanted to be a firefighter, and
Yeah.
uh, they weren't taking on at the time. So I was working for a telecommunications company before that as a manager. And my assistant manager, he turned around and said, "Oh, I'm going into the police. Why don't you do that?" So I went through all of the uh, sign up process and like nearly a year's worth of intake sort of interviews and quests that you have to do and everything else. And I got given a date to go in the police, and 2 days before the fire service phoned me saying, "We're taking on now. Do you want to go through our process?" So I was like, All right. I need to take a bit of a break before I come into the police. So and then I went and done the fire service and got in there. And the fire service in the UK is quite hard to get into. It when I applied, there was 17,500 applicants for 20 jobs.
Oh
So
wow.
yeah, it's very difficult to get in, and it's a long continual learning process once you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. How long have you been doing that now?
Coming up to 16 years.
16 years. Right
Yeah.
on. So were you
So
gardening before you got started doing all of that?
so I've been gardening since I was 7, so nearly 40
Oh
years.
yeah.
Well, more
Okay.
than 40 years now. I'm 48 now. I just turned 48 in March. So yeah, it's over 40 years now that I've been gardening. Started with my grandfather,
Yeah.
and he used to have an allotment. So you guys know what that is now. You spoke about it earlier.
Yeah.
And it was on a hill, a really steep hill. And right at the top of the hill, he had a shed in there, and he had terraced this hill off to grow things. And I
Okay.
can remember him sending me down from the top to the bottom to go and pick all the gooseberries off the bushes down there. And they weren't the thornless types. So I was coming back with spines in my hands and everything else. But, those memories really stuck with me, and
Yeah.
planting seeds and stuff like that. It's just something that really sort of stuck with me right through childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, and you just kind of carry that on and into your life. You said he had a kind of a terrace thing. You've done a similar thing as well too with your own space, right? Did
So
you have kind of
I'm
like
all
a
quite,
hill and
I did when, so I had where I used to live, I used to have a different garden, and that was relatively flat. And then we moved here 11 years ago, but and I put my name down for the allotments, which are literally 100 yards across the road. So
yeah,
it's perfect for me. Um, but they only had a half plot, and it was on a hill, so I had to terrace all of that off so that I could put
yeah,
my fruit and everything else. And eventually, over time, I took on more and more land, but it was up on the top levels where it's a lot flatter.
yeah.
And eventually ended up taking up 3 full-size plots up there. So I now have a growing space of 198 foot long by 80 foot wide. So it's
Oh,
a fair size space. And then I gave the hilled area that was terraced back to the allotment to reallocate to somebody else. So
okay.
all of my plots now, so I got 3 full-size plots of
Yeah.
198 feet by 27 feet, and
Wow.
they are all next to each other. So it's
Right
one
on.
big area.
Yeah, all of us here in the US are thankful you're using feet. That's awesome.
I'm quite old school. I'm 48, so do you know why it's funny? I get friends who will say to me, "Oh, we'll talk about millimeters and meters and this, that, and the other," and
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm not going to convert that now into feet and inches because I'm. It's just something I've always been like. And funny enough, in my first book, I had a few people from the UK pulling me because I was talking stuff in feet, and there was a conversion table in the back.
Right.
That's why there's 2 versions of the new book, because I just couldn't be dealing with all of that.
Exactly, right. Yeah, that's awesome. So do you just garden on an allotment or do you have your own spaces around your home?
So this room is my studio. It's built in a double garage. I've taken over half the garage as a studio, and
Okay.
excuse the messenger, but
Mhm.
as you can see there, I have plants
Oh, there you go.
everywhere, all up here. So I've got a lot of where am I? A lot of um, indoor plants that are down here with me. Got some in the house, but it's mainly down here because my brown-thumbed wife would quickly put them to death with too much watering or something. So down here I've got quite a lot of tropical plants and stuff like that, and I heat just the area down here. Then.
Awesome. That's great too. I love the indoor gardening as well too, as you can see. House
Yeah.
plants were kind of my first kind of growing obsession from when I was a kid. It wasn't
Yeah.
until later when I was an adult, just 12, 13 years ago that I started actually growing,
And
fruits and vegetables and things. I've always grown indoor house plants though.
And for me, it was sort of vice versa. It was I started in the allotment with my grandfather, but then of course the house plants and things sort of snuck in the back door. And
Yes.
whereas like the YouTube channel's all about vegetable gardening and stuff at the moment, eventually I will create it to be about these sort of things as well. But the website is about all forms of gardening, and I
Yeah.
want the YouTube channel to be more like that. So eventually I will break out of just the vegetable stuff. But you know what it's like when you've built yourself a niche for like 12 years. I've been on YouTube since 2007. So,
Yeah.
when you've built a specific niche, it's very hard to sort of break into another one unless you start another channel. And I haven't got time for that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like what Jason and I were talking about a little bit too, is that, you get into, doing channels, creating content, no matter what genre of content you're creating, it's work when it comes down
Yeah,
to it,
huge amounts. I
you
think
know.
the average person who will just come and subscribe and view and everything else, uh, I think they don't really understand the amount of work that goes into making an 8-minute video. To them, it's 8 minutes,
Mhm.
and and
Yeah.
and you know what it's like on YouTube these days. Everybody's attention's like a goldfish, so it's like they'll watch like 2 or 3 minutes of that 8-minute
Yeah.
video, and they don't realize that's taken a week to produce. Do you know? So
Yeah.
so it's like huge amount. Just again, we're live. There's so much that goes on just to arrange it, just to be able to press play. It's
Yeah.
it's huge amounts of work.
Yeah, yeah, again too, like you said, it doesn't matter whether you're producing a video outdoors, arranging your cameras, getting the right type of footage, and then taking it all and editing it down into that video that, covers everything that you want to cover. That's
Yeah.
quite a bit of work when it's put into it. Or if you're doing something live like we're doing here, there's all
Arranging
sorts of,
guests and all the other stuff. Yeah.
yeah, the emails and you got to set up
Building the
all of this
screens for
stuff.
everything to go in. Yeah, no, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it, and we do it because we
Mhm.
love to do it. So,
That's
and
right.
that's the main thing.
Yeah, that is the truth about it too. All of the work I've put into all the videos, I still find that really cool like feeling I get when I finally load that video up. you know
Yeah,
Whether it's only this many people who get to see it or it's a bunch more, it doesn't really matter to me. The viewership, in a sense, I love that reward of, just clicking upload, and then seeing it go live on my channel, and that new thumbnail that shows up on the page, just is something I just love every time. It
it's
makes all the
funny
work worth
because
it.
I as creators, we don't realize the impact that the videos have on people. And
Hmm.
I went to my brother's wedding a couple of weeks ago, and while I was there, he'd invited down a couple and their son from Sheffield. I think it was up that way somewhere, and
Yeah.
uh, I'd never met them before. But I had this little boy who was about 8 or 9 come over to me. His name's Connor, and he gave me
Yeah.
a drawing of me in my garden, and I
Oh
did
yeah.
that. He was subscribed to me, and
That's awesome.
it just happened to be, at my brother's wedding. But he was subscribed to me. I never met them before,
Yeah.
and he'd come up and give me this drawing and what have you. So of course, I've sent him a copy of my book now, and they send him pictures of them in the garden and stuff. So
That's awesome.
it's those sort of things that you don't realize the effects of
Hmm.
how it helps people and things like that. It's
Yeah.
until those things happen that you realize then, oh, hang on, this is making a difference.
Yes, absolutely. I love getting those sort of comments from people and that feedback from people. I'll
Yeah,
share a similar story in a sense too. I was at the last National Heirloom Exposition here in the United States. Um, Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company
yeah,
puts this on each year. It's just a really great event, and lots of garden creators come out to this event, and so it's a chance for a lot of people who watch the different channels to come out and meet people
yeah,
who are making videos. In fact, that's what originally I went there to go see John Kohler, someone I follow for a
yeah.
long
I know
time,
John.
doing
Yeah,
that. And yeah, and I was out hanging out with our first guest of the show, Wendy Fan. She was there
Yeah.
doing a talk, and we were just standing there talking with each other. And this lady walks up to us, and she first recognizes Wendy, and she's like, "Oh, you're Wendy," and they started talking, and then she just kind of looks over and she looks at me and she goes, "And you're the urban gardener," in a complete English accent too. And
Yeah.
tells us that she flew over from England. Her and her husband had something they were doing on the East Coast, but she had to go to the Heirloom Expo. So she flew herself over just to go to that event. But she knew me from, watching my channel over in
Yeah.
England there. And I was just
It's
blown
crazy.
away. I was like,
Yeah.
"What? You know who I am?" She's like, "Yeah, I've
We,
seen your videos. I
we've
follow
had
along."
to we've had to stop shopping at Asda's is in the UK is supermarkets is part of the Walmart brand. Okay, we've had to stop shopping in one of them because there's like so many people up there that watch the channel. And like me and the wife will go shopping. It's like it doubles the time it takes us to shop. So we've had to use a different one. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing we were um, I went to a fire call. Now I'm a watch manager, so I think the sort of equivalent rank for firefighters in your country's captain. So
Okay.
and we are at this fire. It just happened to be a garage on fire, and so I'm there, directing my crew what I need them to do. And this guy whose house or whose garage is burning down, he comes up to me, he says, "Oh, you're totally off the internet." Like, so he's more interested in talking to me, and his garage is burning down by the side of
Oh
him.
my.
It's and it's just really weird. It takes you by shock sometimes, because you just sometimes you're in that position, you're like not expecting it, and you're like, "Oh, hi, yeah,"
Mhm.
it just
Yeah,
takes you like by shock, and but it is nice. We have a similar
yeah.
thing coming up called Malvern Autumn Show, and that's up in the Malvern Hills in the mid of Wales. Sorry, in the mid of England, and so I'll be going to that in May, and that's where a lot of creators will meet up as well there. So that happens twice a year. So I'll be there in May now this year.
Yeah.
So it'll
Yeah,
be good.
that's really awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit different, when you're getting that other side of the experience, especially for me when that happened, I'd gone, like I said, I went to my first Heirloom Expo with the intent of going to meet up with John Kohler. I'd been
Yeah,
watching his videos for years, So, in a similar sense, I'm walking up to him like, "Hey, it's really great to see," like almost kind of like a fan, in a
yeah,
sense. And it's really different to be able to get that myself. I've had a few experiences similar as well, and it's really probably one of the really cool rewards of being able
it's
to
very humbling as
make your
well.
yes,
You know,
very much so.
because to me, I'm just me who gardens, and
Mhm.
and these people coming up to you, and they're talking to you so highly, and you're thinking,
Yeah.
like, stop now, like, do you know what I mean? You just don't know where to put yourself sometimes, like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I'm just this regular gardener,
yeah,
and in a sense too, for me, a lot of what I do comes from, past experience in photography, in
yeah,
journalism, and those sort of things. The garden was just became kind of an avenue for me to,
right,
kind of expand on those sort of past experiences. So, I've never really saw myself as this real expert gardener or anything like that. I just wanted to kind of share what I call the garden adventure, with everybody and all of that. But
yeah,
you start hearing feedback from people and really enjoying the fact that you're sharing that stuff and being able to help them, understand again, like I do a lot of small space gardening. I like to, push the idea that, you can grow almost anywhere,
yeah,
and get that
absolutely,
gardening experience, and to be able to hear back from people who are taking on some of that advice and finding that reward of gardening, is probably one of the best parts of doing all of this work, as we say.
yeah, couldn't agree more.
Awesome, awesome. So again, you're probably one of those original gardeners that I started watching way back in the day when I was first starting my garden. In fact, you were pretty much getting started with your channel when I was starting to look up videos on how to do different things, as my, garden passion was growing and I wanted to
Yeah.
grow more things. I start looking up all the different things. And of course, found your channel years and years ago. What ultimately pushed you to actually, take your garden experience to, creating videos and creating this channel?
So back in 2007, I was filming videos then. So if you were back in right to the very first video of the channel now, that was made in early 2012. But I was actually putting videos online in 2007, literally like the same month that Google took over YouTube. A lot of people don't
Yeah.
realize YouTube started as a dating video platform,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then Google went and bought it in 2007, and that's when I actually set myself an account up. And what I was doing was I was storing video footage on there from what I was doing in the garden and using it as a video diary, because back then, memory cards were really expensive. I was
Mhm.
skint, and so
Yeah.
I just couldn't afford to store them,
Yeah.
and the video quality was dreadful. I didn't, it was just for me. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
because I wasn't worrying about what I was doing, I was just putting these videos up because they were just for me. Um, Over years, then, over the next 4 or 5 years, sort of YouTube changed their algorithms. Instead of like having really sort of scantily clad ladies running around the screen, because that it had a period of that, it then started to push videos out to people, and this is when the early algorithm kicked in, and I noticed that I was starting to gain subscribers. And so in early 2012, I decided, right, okay, I'm going to scrap everything that's on the channel and start actually making videos that are going to help these people rather than just for myself.
Yeah.
And that's where it all started from, really. And it took me 6.5 years to get my first 1,000 subscribers.
Mm.
So when people come to me now going, God, my
Yeah.
channel's not, it's just not growing. And I'm like, how long have you been going? 4 weeks. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, right. Do you know what I mean? 6.5 years to get 1,000 subscribers. And they just don't know the challenges we had back then,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but like I said, it was never to grow that channel. Of course, then it sort of went on to like 5,000 and 10,000, and it just grew to what it is now. And but it's just something that I just wanted to be able to help people with what I knew, and and YouTube gave me the platform that was free, that I could do
Mhm.
that on, and so that's where we came from.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you get the status of being one of the original YouTube gardeners out there, helping
Yeah.
people early on, like myself, to grow their gardens and to, learn more about gardening and all of that. It's just really great. Again, one of the, big reasons why when I started this whole show idea was like, I had a list of people I wanted to have on the show, and you were at the top of that list
Thank
as
you.
far as people that I wanted to make sure that I got to interview and talk with because of your early influence on me and my garden as well too. All right, let's dig into the garden real quick. Let's talk
Okay.
about some of those things that you really enjoy gardening and growing. Do you have any sort of favorites or certain things that you really
Has to
like
be
growing?
potatoes, doesn't it? Has to be
Yeah,
potatoes.
I was gonna say it's got to be the potatoes,
Yeah.
which is
Um,
great because that really, sings to my heart as well too. Because I love container potato growing. I do it every year. Whether I get
so,
successes or not, I always go back to it.
so I've been growing potatoes in containers since 2000, end of 2012, or that was the first year, 2012, and it was really weird because we'd had a really dry year. It rained and snowed a lot, so we had a late start to the year. Firstly, I mean, we had snow like in 2012. It was like June something. We had snow. It was crazy,
Yeah.
and then that went, and the summer came, and then I got taken ill. I'd had an accident in work and I was quite ill.
Mm.
So the potatoes didn't get water. And I had a fantastic crop. It was brilliant.
Oh.
They were a little bit shaded in my old garden, but the crop done really well. So that sort of sold me on container gardening as far as potatoes go. But it wasn't just like having these potatoes grown. It was the fact you, and like tomatoes and other fruits and things that grow above the ground, you don't get to see what you're pulling until that last minute. And
Mhm.
just to sort of uncover that soil there and pulling out these big huge jewels, it's so exciting. And the kids love doing it as well. They love harvesting. Half the time I have to say, right, stop now, I need to make a video. Because they're emptying containers into a
Yeah.
wheelbarrow, and like, well, wait, now I need some, so, but
Yes.
it's nice that they've grown up around the garden. They like there's videos from them, passing me
Mhm.
like bags of things as little nippers, and um,
Yeah.
and it's nice to get them up in the garden. It's a bit harder now. All they want to do now is go out with their mates now, like they're 13 and nearly 13 and 14. So it's a bit harder to get them up there now, but. Every now and then, Caitlin will come up and she'll like, "Right, Dad, I want to help today." Huh? Okay, So
Yes, that's awesome. Nothing like getting the kids in the garden to
yeah,
enjoy that experience and get that. We talk a lot about that on the show. Again, on potatoes, though, I think, they're the real like Christmas present of, vegetables and things that we
yeah,
grow in our
absolutely,
garden. Because like you said, and this is the thing that kind of fascinates me even more. And whether I have, again, like I have a success or not, I always find myself growing more the next year. And, I'll get these big, beautiful potato plants, just look awesome. I'm thinking the whole time I'm growing them, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be a great year. These potatoes are going to be awesome. And then you get in there and find
crappy potatoes.
these little
Yeah,
tiny little
and
things and
like
barely anything out of it. But
that's a big issue with people who feed a lot of nitrogen to the soil
mm,
because it produces all this foliage, and then that's at the
mhm,
cost of the tuber formation. And um, I did an experiment last year because in the UK now they're banning peat. So by
oh,
2024, there's no peat. So they're all
okay,
selling now peat-free composts,
yeah,
but they are absolutely rubbish. And the problem is
oh,
with them is these companies still haven't been able to find alternatives other than coir to be able to bulk out these composts. So it's like loads of green waste and everything going in. And the problem is they've absolutely packed with nitrogen. And I did a video last year showing like this. The potato homes were like taller than me. I'm
yeah,
standing in amongst them and I'm going, I'm going to have a really rubbish crop this year. And I did it. And it's the first year ever that I've had a bad year on potatoes. And uh, don't get me wrong, I grew enough just to see us through the year.
yeah,
But normally we have, surplus that I can give to some of the firefighters at work or to parents, my brother, wherever, I
yeah.
couldn't do that this year. We just didn't have it. And that was all down based to the peat-free compost, but it was just so much nitrogen in it because it's all green waste compost.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that I'm sure is definitely one of the issues I've dealt with too before, as far as overabundance of nitrogen and getting the smaller potatoes and big plants. But again, like I said, I enjoy growing them so much, that each year I find myself going back to it. And I actually had a pretty good year last year. I ended up with some nice good sized ones too. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's nothing like pulling out a big fat potato out of a container for sure. So, is there anything in your garden that you find to be a challenge, or things that you don't really grow anymore because they are a challenge, or
So
things?
sweet potatoes are a challenge here in the UK, and I love to grow them. I've got videos. In fact, I got a load of sweet potato slips down there that are dying because I haven't bothered water them because I've taken what I need. So I'll just
Yeah.
show you now. They're just down there in the old thing
Oh,
there,
yeah.
but I've already taken what I needed off them. They're at the allotment now, and I've just let them go. So that propagator's all shut down now. I'll be cleaning it up. My room's in a mess at the moment. This time of year, it gets in a
It's
right
this
mess.
time
I
of
got
year for sure.
propagators, yeah. So, but yeah, so that'll end up being cleaned out now, and I'll throw it. But and every year I still grow sweet potatoes, and I'm not pulling out these huge monsters because we just don't get the heat. But this year I'm going to actually plant them in the polytunnel, and that hopefully will provide the heat that they require. The slips
Yeah.
have been going well, so they're a good, good strong plant, and they'll go in the ground, and hopefully they'll take off. And I've given the bed a really good sort of cow manure, so hopefully it'll be rich enough to get them going. So hopefully this year will be the year for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that you just don't grow anymore?
Um, Not really. I'll grow most things. There is like sort of specific chilies I won't grow, and mainly because we don't eat them. But I grow others. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So, but every year I'll find one thing. There was one plant, oca, um, which we really liked. It was nice and lemony for going into salads and things. But we didn't like them roasted, and we were looking for things that we could, roast later on in the year.
Yeah.
So I don't tend to grow oca anymore, but every now and then I will get a few plants and I'll grow them on, and we'll just stick them in salads and stuff. But as a rule, I don't grow it no more.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Excellent. And so let's dig into your books. You uh, have now written a couple of books. You started with your was it Composting Masterclass?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What inspired you to start writing books?
Um, I think it a video is really good in that you can get a lot of information across. The problem is getting enough information to somebody, and keeping them on the platform long enough for them to go and view it all. Even
Mhm.
like dedicated viewers, they don't tend to jump from video to video to video to video, even if it's all in a playlist.
Mhm.
Life takes over. They've got to go and do something, and then they forget. So I wanted something that someone could get all of that information that they needed in one go. And so that's where the idea of writing the book came from. And the reason I'd done the composting masterclass first was because the quality of soil really, and the soil life is the foundation for all gardens. And without that foundation, it don't matter what house you build, it's going to fall down. So I wanted to start with that first, and the book is quite an in-depth book, and we talk about all sort of the microbiology in the soil, and the importance of making your own compost, and how to actually make compost and understand the process, so that if something's going wrong, you can go, right, I need to do this, in which to
Mhm.
get it back on track. So that's why Composting Masterclass was written. And then your first vegetable garden, which was this copy here, was written on the back of COVID. And
Yeah.
so many people were coming into gardening, and what I was seeing was they didn't really understand how to actually set a garden up to benefit them, and
Mhm.
what they needed to be doing when they needed to be doing it. So that book went out to a lot of pre-readers before it launched. And about a week before it launched, I had some feedback from a couple of people saying, and they just happened to be, it was written for a US market, because Composting Masterclass, 98% of the books were sold in the US. Right. So
Yeah.
it was, and a lot of my audience are US based. So it was obvious that this book had to be written for the US, which is what I did.
Mm.
But then
Mhm.
it went out to some people who reviewed it in the UK, weren't happy that there were conversion tables. So
Right.
like the last week was like a mad rush to get a second version of the book out. So we had to literally go through all the book again, change all of the measurements over from feet and inches to millimeters and meters, and all weights from pounds to kilograms. And so even though they still have the conversion tables in the back of each book, they're two separate books. So the UK one
Yeah.
has got star on the front saying UK edition. Um, and that's quite important because I did get a negative feedback on Amazon from someone who was subscribed to my channel, and I put a video out explaining all of this as well to make sure you get the right book and what have you. And he bought
Right.
the US version, and he complained that, you know, it was all in US measurements and that there was no UK version. So I was like, that's scratching my head singing. And the thing is with
Ah,
Amazon, it doesn't give you any way to respond to these people, you know,
yeah.
because if I could have responded to them, I could have said, look, there's a UK version. Here's the, you know, here's the link to go and get it. Return your other one. You know, you'd be
Yeah.
happy. You know, but they don't give you that option. So, like, people can leave a review, but you can't reply, and I find that's really frustrating because if someone's got a problem, I want to sort it out. I don't want them
Yeah.
going away thinking, you know, oh well, I feel like I've been duped you. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
So there's two versions of that book, and if you're in the UK or in Europe, make sure you get the one with the star on the front. So
Yes, definitely. So yeah, so that second book is called Your First Vegetable Garden. So what are some of the, quick pointers that your book
So it's
covers
not
there?
written like you would probably think. A lot of people thought it would be like a basic guide. This book is 340 pages.
Oh
So,
yeah,
and
nice and
because like a
thick.
typical book is about 50,000 words, and this book is 130,000 words. And the reason it's that big is because I want to include all the information in it and not cut it down. But it's not written like a basic book would be, like, you know, when you think of maybe your first vegetable garden, you think it'd be basic. It's not written like that. It's written more like a step-by-step guide in setting up your garden, talking about all of the structure in the garden, how to set that out, you know, preparing soil. We're going to, you know, compost and soils quite a bit in there. And then from that sort of stage, we talk about seed sowing, you know, the containers that we would use and why we'd use those, and this, that, and the other. Then we talk about hardening off, planting out, you know, maintaining the crop throughout, you know, the year till harvesting, and knowing when to harvest. And then it goes on then to seed collection, because I believe that people need to collect their own seeds. Firstly, those seeds, they're acclimatized to your area, so they know your
Hmm.
soil, and they've acclimatized already, so they'll be much better for you. It'll save you money. And when we have a time of crisis like we had over the last few years, where you couldn't even buy seeds in the UK, I don't know what it was like. I know Baker Creek was still selling some seeds, but you know, there was a shortage of everything.
Yeah.
Well, I had everything I needed because I collected it all myself, you know. So it took them around that. And then the book then goes on. There are sections in the book about what jobs you should be doing. So it's like a month by month guide in there, you
Okay.
know. And there's a big thing on a breakdown for every. I think the easiest way to do it, like every sort of section of the book has a specific plant, how to grow it, what it likes, what soil it likes, how much it like, you know, how much water it likes, when to feed it, how to feed it.
Yeah.
You know, so all of the vegetables are in there, all of the herbs are in there, and some of the fruit is in there as well. So you know, there's a big section on that, and then there's a big section towards the end then on pest management and things like that. So it's a, you know, it's a book that's really all round, but it was written so that once you're have learnt and you've gone past your first year, it's still a resource that you can go back to
Yeah.
year on year. It don't matter if you're 1 year in the garden or 10 years in the garden, it's going to have that information there that people are going to be able to go back to each time. And that's why it was written like, so some people might think it's a basic guide, but it isn't. And I think maybe I could have titled it a little bit better, but I wanted it, you know, because there's a lot of step-by-step stuff in there when you first
Hmm.
get started, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. As I said too, I've been gardening for many years, but there's still a lot of things that I'm learning and trying to figure out as well too. I do like the idea that in your book you've got, each of those plants and you're talking
Yeah,
about those individually and what they need and all of that, as well as you're talking about a month to month guide. That's probably one of the bigger questions you get out there. When should I
What do I
do
do?
this?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, when should
absolutely.
I do it, and what do I do with this in particular? Because
Yeah.
that's something that they want to grow and all of that too. So
And
uh,
it's just like one of them sort of resources that you can go back. Oh, what am I supposed to be doing this month? Oh, right, this, right, okay, put that down. I can go out in the garden now and actually take some action, because
mhm.
books are great, right? I'll give you an example of what my book collection is. Like, I've got a 10 down there, right? I'm always reading gardening books, right? I
Yep.
should build a shelf in here for them, but and that's just some of them. And Mrs. goes mad every time I go out. Right, I need that book, and
Yeah,
I'm finding
I'm
a
the
lot of
same
the
way.
old.
I got tons of them as well.
I'm finding a lot of the old Reader's Digest books at the moment at like flea markets and stuff. But so to me, a book should be something that doesn't just sit on a shelf, that you can take and implement the information in the book in your garden. It's not
Yeah.
something that's there to be, that you read it and go, okay, fine, that's that, and then go and do something else. So that's how this book has been written. So maybe, like I said, some people may have thought it was one thing when it's actually something else completely. But it will take like someone who's never gardened before right the way through to the end of the year, having a fantastic harvest and being prepared for the following year.
All right. Yes. Yep. I really recommend that book though too to people. Like I said, it's got all that great information on, again, one of my probably favorite points, as I mentioned, is those individual plant things. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's really helpful to people. A lot of books are built just as a general guide, and you're really getting in depth to certain
yeah,
things. Like you said, you can keep going back on it. Say you're trying something new, in a season that you haven't tried before, and be able to get that sort of information. So let's see here. What do you got? You got any future plans? Anything that you're looking to do? You gonna be writing any more books or
so the
videos you're thinking about?
so the third book is already written,
Okay.
and that one is like, the title is sort of finalized, but I can't give it. But it's about the science behind gardening. Okay,
Okay.
that's with a publisher at the moment who is. They've just sent me a beautiful layout for it. It looks absolutely stunning. So these two books were self-published because I do want to produce courses based around these ideas eventually. And because of that, I didn't want them to go through a normal publisher because they control the copyright.
Yeah.
But this third book is actually going through a publisher. So the cover for it has been finalized. The basic layout has all been finalized. The book is written, and that'll be coming out in 2024 at some point. I don't know that we haven't sort of confirmed any dates yet. But that'll probably be my last book for a little while. And, I need to get on
Yeah.
with making some courses and some other stuff.
Yeah. I bet you it takes just a lot of effort and energy to put them
It's been
together.
huge amounts, yeah. And the problem is, while you're writing, like this book was being finalized while I was writing the other one. So it was like, I had it coming from two different ways, and of
Right.
course something has to give. I got a full-time job, I got a family, I got the allotment, and I was writing for my website as well. So something had to give. And last year YouTube gave a little bit. And earlier on the thing, you were talking about not making videos and stuff if you needed a break. I had problems with vertigo and stuff, which is all dealt with now. I've had an operation and sorted that out. But while I was off with that and not being able to film, I was doing this sort of stuff. So I wasn't wasting time, if you like.
Yeah.
But of course, it's hard once you've taken such a big break like I took to sort of get back in the sort of gel of things, like, but
Hmm.
now I can concentrate getting back behind the camera because all the books are done and dusted now. And like I said, I'm hoping to use the studio and the garden now to film some courses this year.
Yeah, yeah, you've definitely got a nice little setup there. I like your little live on air sign there that you got. So you're doing more live streams nowadays?
Yeah, I've been doing a few live streams. I haven't done one for a couple of weeks. Like I said, I've been busy just finalizing, this
Mhm.
book launch and everything else. But we will be dropping lives every week again. We've done them for most of, well, pretty much every week in January, February, and March. And then when the book launched, then I had to have a little bit of a break just to get that sorted out. We'll get back to it now this week and get back on live. I didn't do one this week because I'm on here with you today, and I just didn't want to be sort of like having to. Yeah, it's just, it's easier just to do this one, and then I'll do the live then for next weekend. Like so.
Well, awesome. Well, I really appreciate you, taking that time and coming on to our show.
And I appreciate
And
you having me here.
yeah, it's awesome. Again, like I said, just one of my favorite gardeners. You really helped me get started with all of the things that I'm doing, and encouraging me with my potatoes each and every year. So, it's been really great to have you here on our show. I really, really appreciate you again
Brilliant.
taking the time to be here with us.
And I've loved being here with you. It's been a great show.
Awesome. So yeah, again, we'll have to have you back again sometime
Sure.
and talk more about gardening and gardening in the UK. And again, you have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.
I will do. And you. Bye, guys. Ta-ra.